Hey guys, how do you hear me? Hear me well. Should I stand really here? So my name is Agris. I'm one of the founders behind the company you probably are aware of, AirDog, an auto-follow drone for action sports. I'm hoping that I shouldn't be telling more about what the product is and what the company does. So we do a drone specifically for action sports. It does its thing autonomously. So it makes sure that every move is captured. We are not a successful business yet. Yes, thank you. That said, I think there are a few things that we have done rather well in our early company's life. I think that we have done rather well with early traction and brand awareness within that drone space. And I think that we have done a rather good job with fundraising. And today, I will be actually sharing our story behind our fundraising, fundraising lessons and experience. And I'll be trying to be very truthful with you guys here, because when we talk to journalists, the story we tell is always a bit different. I'll be telling it really from a founder's perspective and giving you a rather open description of what we actually went through. So as you probably, I'm actually clicking the presentation for the first time, so surprised that it didn't appear right away. But so you all probably are aware of us launching the product on Kickstarter. So why did we actually do it? It was not the plan initially. The plan initially was to raise equity funding early. So we went and talked actually with a few venture capitalists, a few angel investors, and that feedback wasn't great. People kind of thought that the product is nice, the value proposition is rather clear, but it was still for them very hard to believe that people will pay that much for a single hardware unit, and it was hard to believe that demand for the product is that great out there. So very soon we realized that we need to amend that initial plan, and we probably won't be able to raise equity funding before getting traction in. Or at least those term sheets, we actually saw a few term sheets before we did our Kickstarter campaign, but it was very clear that we will not be able to build the business we were looking to build if we take that money on those terms proposed back then. So for us, it was important to reach that next milestone and to prove that there is traction for the product out there. So that's when we decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign. So of course, the idea back then was that all we need is that campaign. If we get that traction, we will have VCs lining up to fund the business. So that was the assumption back then. So you can imagine that after raising 1.3 million on Kickstarter, we felt like we are there. We will have the round closed in a few weeks after the campaign. Nothing like that happened. We raised our 2.5 million seed round just a few months ago. It is 7 or 8 months after the Kickstarter campaign. So it actually didn't work out as we planned. And because of that fact, we were in a deep trouble after the Kickstarter campaign. So everybody was cheering about us having a great campaign. We were, a few months later, very worried about the situation we were facing. Why was that? It was because before the Kickstarter campaign, we already were a team of 10. So we had to finance those 10 salaries per month. We had to finance our Kickstarter campaign development. We had to finance all sorts of stuff to get to that point where we have a working prototype, where we have a Kickstarter campaign ready to be launched. So what we did, because we were not able to raise venture capital money, so we borrowed. We borrowed from our friends, our good colleagues, and we borrowed quite a bit. We borrowed, I'll not say the exact number, but it was quite a few $100,000 of euros. So we took quite a lot of debt on. And something also very important to understand about Kickstarter is that Kickstarter is not funding. Money you get through Kickstarter is to produce products. So you actually need that money to get that unit manufactured. And in most cases, the problem is that that product is not developed yet. So you also need to fund with that money your R&D needs. So you actually need to fund R&D process with money that is not meant for that. So the situation that we were at really a few months after the Kickstarter ended was that we had money, but lots of debt. We actually returned from the money we raised on Kickstarter. And we also had our R&D needs because the product was not there. We had to finance our R&D needs. And if we had done it purely with Kickstarter money, we would never had enough funding to actually eventually also ship those units. So all of a sudden, there were more than 1,000 people trusting in us as founders and in us as a company, and actually paying more than $1,000 per unit. And we were liable to them. We were liable to them, and we had that responsibility to eventually get those units shipped. So what we did for the period from the end of Kickstarter campaign until March this year, we were working our asses off to raise equity funding because there was no other way how we could have had those units shipped. So we went to Silicon Valley when we had our Kickstarter campaign up and running, and I think it was very important to be there back then because we met quite a few people that later turned out to be very important in building relationship in Silicon Valley. Why was it so hard to raise actually money in Silicon Valley? Most of the round that we just recently raised is composed of Silicon Valley-based investors. So the biggest hurdle, of course, for any team coming out of Baltics is that most probably we don't know people over there. And I can imagine that you have heard people saying that like 1,000 times before, but raising equity funding it's a relationship situation. It's about building relationship, especially early in your company life. It's more about the team, more about the relationship than about anything else. So to raise money in Silicon Valley without having that network is extremely hard. So what we did, we were looking for people that actually knew at least a few guys over there. And Agris was one of the guys that actually helped. Agris introduced us to a few people that turned out to be very important for the company later. In particular, Dan Bergil led our syndicate on AngelList later on. So we reached out to those guys that we knew that have some certain connections in Wally, and we actually went over there quite a few times. I've been in Silicon Valley over the course of last 12 months 6 times. I think altogether I've stayed there for 6 months. So you have to be there because people want to see you, people want to talk with you, and Skype just doesn't work. It works in a way that you can talk with the person, but at least we failed converting investors over Skype. So in case you have that ambition to actually raise money in Silicon Valley, I think you have to understand that you have to have presence there. At least you have to be ready to be there and spend there quite a lot of time. And it takes time and it takes money as well. Bay Area is ridiculously expensive. Living, car rentals, eating, it all costs. So you have to be ready for that. When you meet with those first guys you pitch your business to, they always ask you a question I think everyone does. Who else is in the round? Here in this part of the world, we sometimes see VCs trying to take the entire round. And Silicon Valley, it almost never happens, certainly in those early stages. People understand that another investor can bring value on board, and people also understand that it's a numbers game. So they have to do quite a lot of investments in order to get statistics working and eventually be successful. So you will see very rich guys writing you a 25K check. Maybe somebody will do 100K check if we talk about angel investors. VCs will do more, but very often you will be in early stages talking with angel investors. So they always want to know who else is in the round. So, and when you start the process, it's very hard because you hear that question and you actually don't have an answer for that because there's nobody on the board. And it's really about getting those first guys in. You have to find those crazy angel investors that are willing to commit early without actually nobody else being on board. What it means though still is that most often or almost always there will be a condition. They'll say, I'll write you a 100K check, but you have to have commitments for $1.5 million before you can take my money. So you still kind of have that commitment, but you have to raise another 1.4 in order to really get that money. So it's not that it takes time before you can start collecting funds. It was also hard for us in Silicon Valley because hardware is not the coolest kid on the block there. Hardware is hard. It's kind of the hardware itself, the name suggests it. So there are quite a few VCs that actually don't invest in hardware, and I would even say that most of them don't invest in hardware. So we are also a team based out of Latvia. There is no experience with Latvian startups over there. Nobody knows what to expect from us. So we kind of always have to prove that we understand what we are talking about, and they always have to have that courage to actually invest abroad. Many investors in Silicon Valley doesn't invest outside the boundaries of Bay Area at all. So they kind of assume that all the smartest people live there and don't really bother about anything else out there. And of course, drones itself as well. It's a very trendy industry these days, but there is no traction in drone space at all at this point. There are no exits. There are just a few companies that have raised a lot of dollars. But most of VCs, something that's also quite frustrating, and it was frustrating for us, that most VCs that we were introduced to were willing to take meetings with us. So I ended up probably doing hundreds of meetings, more than 100. I think it's certainly true. But I felt like many are taking the meeting because they want to learn more about a space. And it's like the easiest way how to learn about a space is just having those meetings with companies from the industry. And that's how they try to gain some market intelligence, but there is no real intent to invest now in the space. They just want to start learning about it, start watching it, start understanding it. So drones are trendy, but the fact that there is no track record in that specific industry doesn't really help. And this is probably the most difficult one. And I think that this is the key for getting investors on board. So you have to create that moment of scarcity. Investors are smart. They understand that startups always claim that they're closing the round in 2 weeks. So guys, if you are not on board today, tomorrow, you'll miss the opportunity. They kind of don't buy in. And after like 3 months of exchanging these emails of you suggesting that they'll be soon late, and you still coming back after 3 months and the round is still not closed, you kind of start losing credibility. And then there is that challenge, how to regain it and how to create that moment of scarcity. And for us, it was the biggest hurdle, and I think that's something that we did manage to overcome with our CES appearance. Many back then were questioning the decision. We heard from quite a few people that questioned, guys, why are you spending again a couple of $100,000 on that appearance in CES in a situation where you are running out of money, you are burning yourselves down, instead of just trying to get that product done and at least ship a few units. It was a crazy move, but it paid off. We won that Best Drone of CES award. We did prove that we can actually build the product because quite a few larger media guys had an opportunity to play with the unit out in Las Vegas desert. And again, we got that media attention, that traction we needed, and that moment of scarcity. So investors all of a sudden really believed that in a few weeks the deal will be gone, that they will miss the opportunity. And we pretty much closed the round in a week after CES. We had commitments in place. It was just the paperwork from that point. So I think scarcity is the key. I think you have to be very strategic with how you negotiate with investors, with how do you create that belief in you being a very scarce deal. A bit of thoughts around our closing process. So I do believe that you have to be very selective with first investors on board, because those are the guys that you will use as a flag when you go and talk and pitch to other investors. So I think you always have to try to get rather well-known investors on board early. You will later leverage them and raise more. But when it comes to closing the round, I do believe that once you have an opportunity to close, you have to close it. Just don't think about it too much. Take the money and close the round. Because people change their mind. Situations change. And we saw that happening with us as well. I think we were at some point also very close before our CES appearance. We were very close to closing the round, at least have our first stage closing. But then that GoPro announcement came out. And us being focused on action sports in particular, on that vertical, and GoPro coming out with their announcement of going into drone space, it hurt us. It hurt us, and I think we lost that opportunity to close the round back then. So things change, situations change. I think, again, I'll repeat myself, but be selective with those first guys as investors you have on board. Set deal terms with them, and then just close the round once you have an opportunity. Convertible debt versus a priced round. Again, it's here because we made that error. I would suggest we were initially going with a convertible debt as a deal structure because it's just very popular these days. Everybody is doing a convertible note. At some point, we just realized that it doesn't really make sense because, at least my understanding of a convertible note, we can later have a discussion here, but it's great if you do a small round and you just don't want to mess with that paperwork that you will be messing with in case you do a priced round, an equity round. But when it comes to larger rounds, that uncertainty that is left there in case of you doing a convertible note, I don't think it's worth that. Myself as an entrepreneur, I don't like uncertainty. I don't like to think about what if I don't raise that next round in those next 80 months I have for doing that. What if I have raised my initial round at a higher valuation than I should have done it? What if I do a down round as a next round of funding? So all those questions are still there, kind of, with you being left with a convertible note. That's why, me personally, I prefer priced rounds over convertible note rounds. Of course, as long as the size of the round allow you to do that, because in US you will probably pay $30,000-$40,000 for legal advice purely to get the price round done. Certainly in our case where we have 20 plus investors on board. But there are ways around it. I think it's wise to always base documents on Series Seed in case you do a price round or on YC Safe. It's Y Combinator Safe note, something that they suggest and many in Silicon Valley actually use. Many don't bother building documents themselves. Just use a template and adjust it. That's what we actually also did. We based our documents on Series Seed. You can go check it out if you raise a round. I feel like many investors, especially in this part of the world, overcomplicate deal terms and probably further down the road hurt themselves by doing it. We actually never negotiated deal terms with 95% of the investors in our round. We negotiated deal terms with our lead investor, and then it was pretty much leave it or take it situation with everybody else. I don't think that you can afford to get into those negotiations with everybody in the round as a startup company. And it's also how you level the playing field with everybody. You want to make sure that everybody comes on board on the same deal terms. So this is the last one. Suggests that, again, something from our experience, we ended up raising our round or closing our round at a lower valuation than most of the round was actually committed at. So most of the round was committed at a higher valuation than we were later able to negotiate with our lead investor. But unfortunately, we were not able to close the round without the lead investor on board. So we had to lower that valuation. I've seen startups doing that mistake of going out there, convincing somebody that they are now worth, let's say, $25 million pre-money, and then sticking with that valuation with everybody else that they approach. And after quite a few months, and then quite a few months later, finding themselves in a situation that they have talked with everybody they know, and everybody has said no based upon that unrealistic valuation. So really try to think about what's the valuation you think you can close the round, instead of what's the valuation you can get a few or even most of the guys on board. Because in our situation, it was really a hard decision, being in a situation where we have most of the round committed at a rather higher valuation to really go quite a bit lower than that. But I think it was right. We got it done. We have money in the bank. That's what we needed. We have a chance to really give it a try. Something else that we did in order to top the round up. So we initially raised $2 million. But then had a great guy, I mentioned here before, Dan Bergil, who wanted to do a syndicate on AngelList. And we had no idea how that will work for us, but we were kind of curious. So we had our experience with Kickstarter, so we thought we should try AngelList as well, and it worked really well, at least for us. We raised another $460,000 on AngelList, and we did it in approximately 2 to 3 weeks. So what matters there? What matters on AngelList? Really, there are quite a few articles suggesting the opposite, but that's what I believe in, and that's what I have seen on AngelList. Do it once you have at least quite a few well-known investors on board, and do it when you have most of the round raised, or you are just really doing an AngelList to top the round up. Because those rules doesn't change. It's no different, only because of the fact that all of a sudden you are now raising online. So people still want to know who else is in the round and what traction are you getting. So if you have those great investors on board, they see that they have invested, it really matters. I think it's crucial, because people just want to find or want to see a proof for you being a viable deal. So I think that you still want to do it really to top the investment up. If that's possible, we managed to do it. Find somebody on AngelList who you know and try to get your deal featured, because that will change the situation dramatically. So I was literally at my laptop at that moment when AngelList featured the deal. So what they do a newsletter. They sent out to everybody over an email, everybody on the platform. So every investor registered with AngelList is getting your deal as a proposal. It was just boom. A few hours later, we were with Dan on a phone call and trying to understand whether we need to raise the bar, like the total volume we are looking to raise over AngelList. We actually did it. So the initial goal was to raise 200,000. It was very fast. We did it very fast, and we increased it to 430. So that is of course crucial. In order for them to do it, of course, you also have to do decently well before they feature you. So I think we raised probably 100K before they actually featured us. But certainly that personal relationship with somebody over there is what you need to make it happen. Find a great syndicate lead. Out of those 90 guys that invested over AngelList, probably only less than 10 reached out to me and asked the question directly to me. The rest talked with the syndicate lead. So syndicate lead is the guy who actually promotes the deal on behalf of you. So he's the one talking with those angel investors, smaller investors. So make sure it's a great guy. Make sure he knows what he's talking about. Make sure that he has a good track record and following on AngelList. It's a social network. So it matters how popular or how well known you are on that platform as a lead investor. Great if you have traction. So that's what people are pretty much, those small guys are looking for traction and looking for investors that are already on board. As with Kickstarter, very clear value proposition. We see mostly those guys doing well that have that aspect nailed down. Easy to understand. Auto follow drone for action sports is very easy to understand. People watch a video and they understand what it's about. They can like it, they can have opinion on it, but they understand certainly what we are trying to build and what needs we are trying to serve. That's about it, guys. Questions, answers. I'm over time already. Please.
Hi. You said about Latvian recognition that there isn't any. Did you try to brand yourself as a Scandinavian startup or something like that?
You mean that people don't know what Latvian startups are about? Yeah.
Did you try it or?
No, we actually try to say that we are from Palo Alto. We actually try to suggest that we have an office there and that we are looking to establish our business division there and that we are kind of slowly moving in and building an office there. But at some point, of course, we had to be very open about it. We had to admit that the team is in Latvia. We ourselves are mostly in Latvia, trying to spend as much time as we can in US. Yes, we do think, and it's true, that it makes a lot of sense eventually to settle down with our business division there, but it won't happen this year. So always be very open with those guys. They will find out, and once they find out, that opportunity is gone. And yeah, you don't wanna ever misrepresent anything about the business.
Can I ask? I'm more interested in the engineering part of the project, actually.
I know nothing about it.
You don't know nothing. Okay, then I have two questions, basically. Have you solved all the problems with the and when the first units will be shipped, if this information is already available?
So the first batch is in manufacturing
right now.
Already right now.
Okay.
So we have commenced manufacturing of that first test batch. So we have a few issues on hardware side of things, quite a bit of development left on software side of things for the first product version. So we're getting there. We are getting there.
Thanks for the honest talk. I appreciate it very much. And my question is, how do you incentivize the lead of the round, in this case on AngelList? Do you pay anything, or do you have any other incentivizing schemes? Thank you.
It's actually something that's already built in the structure itself. So they take carry. So certain percentage of carry or profits that the investment that the fund makes is kept by the lead investor. So the lead investor actually gets more out of the deal, and it's something that we cannot affect. At least I believe we cannot. We never had a discussion about it. It was 20% bump. That's what it was. But it's actually split. 20% is actually split by the lead investor, the angel list itself, and the fund managing that special purpose vehicle that they establish to invest in your company. Because we, of course, don't want 90 guys investing in our company and having to exchange emails with 90 guys. So we have it's a syndicate. It's a single entity, a single legal entity investing in the company.
Maybe it's somehow connected to your answer now, but when you have so many different investors, how much part of the company you have to give away? Isn't there quickly the point coming when you are left with 5 or 10% for yourself?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many investors are on board. The total size of the round matters. You can raise it from a single investor, or you can raise it from 20. You still give away the same amount of equity you would have done in case of single investor taking the entire round.
And how much, for example, 50 or 80, 90, or what do they do?
So usually what you try to in a single round, you try not to give away more than 30%. Sometimes a bit more than that, but kind of a 30 is the threshold. So per round, 30%.
When you arrived in Silicon Valley, did you already had this prototype or only idea?
We had a prototype when we did our Kickstarter campaign already. So that's when we also we were demonstrating the unit. So yeah, we did. We had to do quite a few parking lot demonstrations. So we've done that a lot.
Maybe one last final question. That was a question. Quick question, final. Which one is first?
Did you consider selling options or warrants instead of shares, or more options and warrants instead of equity, to minimize or postpone the dilution, to keep more control over the company for a longer period?
There are probably all sorts of warrants out there, but the ones that I'm aware of doesn't give you money. At least warrants that investors sometimes try to ask on top of their investment, like an opportunity to invest at a later stage at the same valuation. That's what I understand with a warrant. So maybe you think of something very different.
Give me a free option, I'll take it.
Yeah, of course, but I need money today. So that option is not an option for us. So options is great for employees. Options are great for advisors, and we do give options to those guys. But it's not how you can fund the business.
Investors won't accept options, long-dated options at a low strike price?
They would, but why would I give them it?
To get money in return?
To get money them in return for that? For options?
Yeah.
Again, not something that I'm not aware of a structure like that. Options are usually exercised some time later, much later in future, at that strike price set today. So it doesn't give you money today. Andres, you want to comment here?
You couldn't raise any conceivable amount of money with an option like that.
That's how convertible notes are used for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Agris, for sharing your story.